Can you hear me or?
It'll hear you just fine.
Okay, great.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to meet with us today. Welcome to New Orleans.
Thank
Had
you.
a great time.
I am. Thanks.
Have you been enjoying the city and the convention so far?
I love New Orleans. Been here many times. I think it's a great town. My daughter goes to college here at Tulane, so I cherish the opportunity to come down here to see her, first of all. But I've had a great time at MechaCon so far. We're about halfway through it, and it's been a lot of fun so far. It's very well run, and had just a couple panels so far, but they both went really well, and having a good time.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, like your job, what you do in the industry.
My name is Greg Weisman. I am a writer-producer in animation for the most part. I think the thing I'm probably most famous for is creating and being one of the producers on Gargoyles back in the 90s. And I also wrote the Gargoyles comic books put out by SLG a few years ago. Gargoyles was kind of my baby. I developed the show at Disney and stayed with it pretty much from beginning to end for the first two seasons. Tried to do a little work on the third season, Goliath Chronicles, and that didn't work out for various reasons. But I never forgot Gargoyles, and I love the fans. They've been great to me, and I hope I've been at least pretty good to them. And that's sort of the thing I'm best known for, but I've done a lot of other shows. I was a story editor on Roughnecks, the Starship Troopers Chronicles. I was a producer on the second season of Witch. I was one of the producers on Spectacular Spider-Man. I was one of the producers on Young Justice. And I developed all those shows, or at least helped develop all those shows. And I am currently one of three executive producers with Dave Filoni and Simon Kinberg on the new Star Wars Rebels television series, which is coming out in fall of 2014. And we're hard at work on that. And I've also I've written comic books even longer than I've been doing animation. But the big news for me is I've also written a novel called Reign of the Ghosts, which comes out this December. And it's the first book in a 9-book series, and I'm currently writing the second book furiously, trying to meet my deadline on the second book in the series. And I'm very excited about that. It's a story about a 13-year-old girl who lives on a Caribbean island, and her parents both work in the tourist service industry. She feels like her life is very trapped, like she's just going to wind up growing up on these islands and doing just what her parents do, and nothing else will come of her life. And then a few strange things start to happen, and she realizes she can talk to dead people, and she's got a destiny. And so I think it's a really fun story. I've been working on it for over a decade, and I'm very excited for people to finally be able to read it. And it's been great. I work in a very collaborative medium, and I love doing that. But I got to admit, there's something fun about just me and the keyboard and writing something that is very personal and just for me, and using language to draw the pictures instead of having artists do it for me. There's something kind of exciting about that. So I'm having a great time working on that book.
Yeah, it's on. I saw it on Amazon a few days ago for pre-order.
Yeah, you can pre-order on Amazon, at Walmart, pretty much any place that sells books. You can pre-order it. It's going to be available as both a book and an e-book, obviously. And so, yeah, I'm hoping a lot of people buy a lot of copies.
Well, I'll help you. I already pre-ordered a book, so
thank you.
We'll see how that goes. What was your original inspiration for the Gargoyles series? Where did this all come from?
Well, long before I was working in cartoons, when I was in college, high school, I was just fascinated by gargoyles. There's something about there aren't a lot of myths about gargoyles, but there are sort of one core story, which is that they were put on these buildings to scare off evil spirits. And that, to me, just the idea of that was fascinating to me, that you put something scary to scare away something scarier. And so I used to take pictures of gargoyles, collect postcards with gargoyles. I spent a semester at Oxford University, and Oxford's a great gargoyles town. Lots of gargoyles, lots of funny gargoyles, lots of all kinds of gargoyles. And on my wall, I just had all these pictures and postcards of gargoyles, so it was something that just always kind of interested me. Flash forward a bunch of years, I'm working at Disney TV Animation. I'm a development executive there, and we were looking for a show much like Gummy Bears. We had this great show at Disney called Gummy Bears that we loved, but which we felt didn't get enough respect. And in part, it didn't get enough respect because it was about cute, cuddly, multicolored bears. And there was a lot of confusion, really, with another show called Care Bears. And Care Bears was this sort of saccharinely sweet bears. And I understand the confusion because they had these multicolored bears that were very sugary, and our show was very interesting, and I didn't create it. I had nothing. I mean, I worked on it a little toward the end, but I don't want to take any credit for Gummy Bears. That was created and developed by a guy named Jim Magon. It's amazing talent. And by the time I was working on it, the two guys on it were Rich Fogel and Mark Seidenberg, and they were great. Taught me a lot. But, you know, our show was named after a candy, so I understand the confusion. But I thought our show, the Disney show, was fantastic. Disney's Gummy Bears. It had this rich mythology, it had this medieval setting, it had this great backstory, and great characters, and it just didn't get any respect. And so we literally set out to say, is there a way we could do a show like Gummy Bears with this rich story, big backstory, with these great characters that would get a little more respect? And so we did two things. We changed it from medieval setting to a modern day setting, so it would feel edgier and feel more current. So we had these medieval characters wake up in the modern setting, and instead of making them bears, we made them gargoyles, and it was still a comedy show. It was an adventure comedy, just like Gummy Bears was. We had all these cute little multicolored gargoyles, and who were cursed under a spell back in the Middle Ages and fell asleep for 1,000 years and woke up in the present and had these adventures, and it was fun. And we pitched it to Michael Eisner, who ran the Walt Disney Company at the time, and he didn't like it. He passed. So, but we really felt there was something to the idea. So we went back to the drawing board, and we showed the pitch to a number of people just to sort of get feedback on it. And one of the people we showed it to was Tad Stones, who was the creator of Darkwing Duck. Another guy I learned a tremendous amount from. And Tad said, well, you know, Beauty and the Beast, there was this little movie Disney had done at the time. You may have heard of it, Beauty and the Beast. And, you know, he said, what if you had one gargoyle who was sort of more of a hero character, you know, a big gargoyle who was a hero character. And then my sort of comic book background kicked in, and I created Goliath based on Tad's suggestion. He was the one character that hadn't existed in the previous comedy development. Even Demona existed in the previous comedy development. And we took the whole comedy show and put it through the prism of Goliath and came out the other end with this great show that you guys saw, which was this action drama with humor in it and romance and all sorts of things, but primarily an action show, which we then created this huge pitch for with all these characters, the mutates and the pack and all this stuff, and we pitched it to Michael Eisner, and he didn't like it, and he passed on it. So we thought it was dead, because we thought, hey, we pitched it as a comedy, and he didn't want it. We pitched it as a drama, and he didn't want it, so we thought it was over. And then Jeffrey Katzenberg said, no, Michael didn't kill it. He wanted you to work on it some more. And, you know, I'd been there, and I knew he'd killed it. But what that said to me was that Jeffrey really liked it. And he wanted us to work on it some more. And I think, you know, my immediate bosses, Bruce Cranston and Gary Kreisel, were all very supportive of it, too. And I think Gary had also talked to Jeffrey and saw that we needed to get into different kind of territory than always doing the sort of funny animal cartoons. And so we went back to the drawing board. The problem was we all really liked the show. None of us wanted to change the show. So we realized we weren't going to change the show at all. We were just going to change the pitch. And the main way we changed the pitch was by cutting stuff out of the pitch. We focused the pitch on Elise and Goliath. and made it about a Beauty and the Beast story. We took out all this stuff, which eventually still got in the show. The pack still got in the show. The mutates still got in the show. All this stuff that we cut out of the pitch, we weren't cutting from the show. We were just simplifying the pitch, making it clearer. And we repitched the show, much shorter version of the pitch, much more focused on Goliath and Elisa. Pitched it again. Michael loved it. He bought it. And at the end of the meeting, keep in mind, we hadn't added anything, just subtracted. Jeffrey turned to me at the end of the meeting and he said, "You added a lot to that, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." Because my mom didn't raise no fools. So, and we made the show. And like I said, it was the show we had really pitched the second time, not the comedy show, but the second pitch. But, we learned a lot about pitching in this process because sometimes less is more. In fact, most of the time, less is more. And that's how Gargoyles wound up on the air.
So, in Gargoyles, we've seen King Arthur and legend, we've seen Greek gods, Norse gods, all these different mythos, Shakespearean tales, all interwoven into Gargoyles. Was this part of your final pitch, or did something kind of evolve after the first few episodes?
It wasn't part of the pitch, but it was definitely a goal of mine, certainly in the second season, to expand the world and to bring in more and more mythologies. You mentioned a lot of the European mythologies, but we also had African mythology in there and South American mythology in there, inspirations from all that. A lot of stuff from literature, everything from Mary Shelley to Charles Dickens to Frank Sinatra movies. I mean, we took inspiration from anywhere and everywhere, and we tried to create this sort of unified mythological whole, with Shakespeare as sort of our guiding light. Although, we also got a lot of inspiration from Gummy Bears, from Hill Street Blues was a big inspiration to me personally. And then, obviously the Shakespeare. But all that became part of trying to create a whole universe of characters via Gargoyles, which at one point was actually a specific request from Michael Eisner. In other words, there was a point at Disney, and this is ironic since Disney ended up buying Marvel, but there was a point at Disney when Michael wanted to buy Marvel and was advised against it at the time because Marvel's financial situation was a mess and the rights for all the characters were being held by all these different film companies, and he was advised against buying Marvel, but Warner Brothers owned DC and he wanted to compete in these kind of genres. So one of the things not the only thing, but one of the things he wanted to do to help build those kind of franchises is he turned to Gargoyles and he said, "Can you take Gargoyles, which was our successful action show, and can you make a universe out of that?" And we said yes, and we set about to do it. And then by the time the animation takes a long time, by the time we'd sort of gotten to that point, everything had kind of changed. All my bosses left. Jeffrey went to DreamWorks, Gary went to DreamWorks, Bruce went to DreamWorks, Rich Frank left. Michael was still there, but he was, the company had shifted and he had different concerns. And so Gargoyles was supposed to be sort of the Fantastic Four of a Disney superhero universe, the first building block in the universe. And we had consciously worked to create that universe. By the time we got to the point where we had created it, the ship had sort of sailed and no one was too interested in that anymore. And the people who took over weren't attached to Gargoyles and didn't feel like pursuing it.
Kind of building off what you were talking about with the bigger universe you're making, online on your own website, I believe. We've seen a lot of different story pitches that you've had, like with the Avalonian legends, like following Griff's story, following the bad guys and what they're doing and all that. Will we ever see any more continuation of these, like different stories that you've been kind of...
Well, the thing to keep in mind is it's not up to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't own Gargoyles. I wish I did. But Disney owns it. Disney controls it. We were able to do the SLG comic books for a few years because SLG had the Gargoyles license, but Disney took the license back. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but the short answer is they took the license back and haven't done anything with it since. And I have, for 20 years now, or 19 years anyway. Been trying to get Disney to do more with Gargoyles, and mostly hit roadblocks. They just don't seem too interested in the property right now, not too interested in pursuing it. And I would love nothing more professionally than to do more Gargoyles, but it's not mine to do it with. So, it's really got to come, from Disney's being willing to sort of say, yeah, let's do more comics, or yeah, let's do more cartoons, or yeah, let's do a live-action movie that's actually about the TV series or based on the TV series, as opposed to based on something called Gargoyles that has nothing to do with the TV series, which is what they're, at least in theory, pursuing now. Right. So it's tough. It's really tough. I wish we could do more, but it's just not up to me.
Aside from Gargoyles, you're also well known for Young Justice. How is it working with so many iconic characters like The Flash, their prodigies, Superman and his, all these different superheroes that we've known for decades now, and everyone's grown up and everyone's known about?
Well, Spectacular Spider-Man, which I did before Young Justice, was good training for that. Really learned a lot adapting the Spider-Man mythology to cartoons, and so for Young Justice it was a very similar process. A little harder, I would say, just because we had so many characters. It's one thing to do a show about a hero and his supporting cast and his opponents. It's another thing to do a show about a team of heroes and their supporting cast of heroes and other supporting cast and their opponents. It's a lot harder because it's a lot more balls in the air to juggle. But the lessons are basically the same for any character, hero, villain, supporting. What you're looking for is to get down to the real core essence of each character. So much has been written about a character like Robin, who was created in 1941. That some of that stuff is golden, some of that stuff is and everything in between. So you have to sort of settle in and figure out what is the core of this character, what really makes this character unique and essential, and someone that we just have to see, and who we're going to fall in love with, or any of that stuff. And we tried to then build on that, set it in a modern context. There were these buzzwords that we created actually for the Spider-Man show, which we called the C's, which was we wanted it to be classic, we wanted it to be coherent, their origins, their backstories, we wanted it to be cohesive, and we wanted clarity, and we wanted it to be iconic, which doesn't actually start with a C, but has a nice C sound right near the beginning. And last of all, contemporary, because at the same time we were setting in the present. So, when we did Spider-Man, it was 1963 recast as 1998, and when we were doing Young Justice, it was not 1998, 2008.
Wrong decade.
Wrong decade. When we were doing Young Justice, it was the same thing. We were saying, okay, we're going to posit a version of the DC universe that Superman showed up about a decade ago, which gives you time for these teenagers to have become heroes and sidekicks and that sort of thing. And we're going to sort of start over in 2010 on the assumption that Superman showed up in 2000 or something like that. I mean, I actually have this very complicated timeline that's over 200 pages and nails it all down, but I don't know it by heart. But it was something like that. And that allowed us to sort of get to the core of these characters and have a good time with them.
Out of all the different works you've done over the years, what would you say is your favorite one, or the one you enjoyed the most working on?
Well, in terms of enjoying working on them, there are a lot of shows I've enjoyed. In terms of my favorite, it's still probably Gargoyles. I mean, that's the one I created. That's my baby. I don't own it, but I feel like I have creative ownership of it in a way that I can't possibly have over Spider-Man, which was, of course, created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and or the various characters of Young Justice, most of whom I had nothing to do with creating at all. Gargoyles, I was intimately involved in creating every single character that's in that show. Not that there wasn't a team. There was a team. A lot of great people, Michael Reeves, Frank Parr, Jamie Thomason, the great voice actors we had. but I was involved in every step of that production. So that's still kind of my favorite. But I loved working on Witch. I loved working on Starship Troopers. I loved working on Young Justice and Spectacular Spider-Man, and I'm having a blast working on Star Wars Rebels right now. So the process is just a great deal of fun for me. I'm not saying it's not hard. It can be very hard, and the schedules can be very brutal, but the process is a lot of fun for me, and I've always had great collaborators, great partners on every project I've worked with. Frank Parr on Gargoyles, Vic Cook on Spectacular Spider-Man, Brandon Vietti, smartest guy I know, on Young Justice, and now Dave Filoni and Simon Kinberg on Star Wars Rebels. Great partners, and that makes the job, just the creative side of the job, just a ton of fun.
So, your next project now is going to be the Star Wars Rebels. What can you tell us about it so far?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing. A, because we only just started. I started working there in May, so there isn't a lot to tell. And B, what I do know, Lucas would have me assassinated if, I don't mean George Lucas, I mean Lucasfilm, if I revealed anything. So I can talk a little bit about process. Three producers are Dave Filoni, who was the supervising director of Clone Wars, Simon Kinberg, who just finished shooting. He's producing X-Men: Days of Future Past, the live-action movie. They just finished their shoot. Simon's actually taken a much-needed vacation right now. And he's written Mr. and Mrs. Smith and X-Men First Climb. He's written a bunch of stuff. He's a great guy, and three of us are having a blast working together. Our team includes Pablo Hidalgo over at Lucasfilm, who's our sort of resident Wikipedia, living, walking Wikipedia, and a bunch of great writers on the show as well. And Simon is writing wrote the pilot, and I'm writing a bunch of episodes, and Simon's going to write the season finale as well. And we've got just a great group of talented people there, and we've broken all the stories for the whole season. Our pilot, our 1 hour pilot, is going to air in the fall of 2014 on the Disney Channel, and then the series will start airing on Disney XD worldwide. Our inspiration is largely coming from Ralph McQuarrie's original inspirational designs for episodes 4 and 5. And our show is set between episode 3 and episode 4. So the Empire's here, and the rebellion is just starting to form, and that's what our show's about.
In closing, what would you like to say to your fans or anyone who'd be seeing this in the future?
Well, first off, buy my novel. Please buy my novel. Reign of the Ghosts, available for pre-order on Amazon or Walmart now. Reign of the Ghosts by Greg Weisman. I'm going to say it one more time. Reign of the Ghosts. But otherwise, stay tuned for Star Wars Rebels. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time with it. If you're fans of any of the stuff I've done in the past, keep the faith. I haven't given up on doing more Gargoyles or Spider-Man or Young Justice. I love those shows. I'd love to do more of it in any form, particularly Young Justice, since that's the freshest one. I think the thing to keep in mind is there's Young Justice product you can buy now. There are trade paperbacks of the comics that I wrote, which are in continuity with the show. There's the soundtrack album is out and available for sale. There are DVD sets that you can buy. And then coming in November is Young Justice Legacy, which is a video game that is in continuity with the series, set during the 5-year gap between Season 1 and Season 2. It tells a very important story about that 5-year gap. And Little Orbit's making that game, and if it's successful, they might want to make more, which is more content from Brandon and I, because we came up with the story for this game, and we're working on, and we'd be happy to work on more with Little Orbit. But the main thing is that if you want more Young Justice, you want more of any of these shows, the best way to tell the studios is with your wallet. That's the best way to vote. If they know that they can make money on them, they'll want to make more too. So that's the way to achieve it. And that's my incredibly whorish Way to end this interview.